Now, Ms Graham, who's the next witness?
The next witness is Constable Brian Geddes.
Good afternoon, Constable Geddes. Will you
Afternoon.
take the oath?
Yes,
I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that I will tell the truth,
that I will tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Ms Graham.
Thank you. You are Brian Geddes.
That's correct, yes.
What age are you?
52.
And you have 21 years service?
That's
is that
correct,
right?
yes.
And I don't know whether you've watched any other evidence in the hearing.
No,
Well,
not
let
watched
me
any.
explain. We have a black folder right in front of you, and you may use that throughout if you wish, and that should contain a number of statements that you've given in the past. So let me just explain to you what's there, because if at any time you want to refer to any of them, you've got hard copies. So the first one is PERC 00355, and this should be a statement dated the 14th of July at 13:10. And it was given by you to investigator Karine Pattenden. Do you have that in your folder?
Yeah, I think it's the last one.
The last one.
Yep.
So that's that was the earliest one, if you like, the 14th
Right.
of July. And we've heard this will be called a PERC statement, the first statement you gave to an investigator from PERC. And that was the 14th of July, but it relates to the events on the 3rd of May 2015.
Yes.
And were you doing your best to try and tell the truth and give an accurate account to PERC about your involvement in these
At the
events?
time, yes.
Thank you. And then the second statement, so moving forward in your folder, PERC 356 should be a statement dated the 23rd of July 2015, again to investigator Pattenden at Kirkcaldy Police Office. And again, were you doing your best to give true and accurate information to PERC
Yes.
when they spoke to you on that occasion?
Yes.
Thank you. Then the third statement was the 12th of January 2017. That should be PERC 357. That was taken 12th of January 2017 by a DSI William Little at Kirkcaldy Police Office, but again that was to an officer from PERC,
Yes.
Mr. Little. Again, were you doing your best to tell him the truth and give an accurate account
Yes,
of
I
the
was.
events? And you'll see as we go through these that they're also coming up on the screen, Constable Geddes. And as we go through, I might ask for paragraphs or pages to be put on the screen. But if you have the hard copy, you can look around what else is there if I'm putting the wrong thing up.
Yep. Yes.
And then finally, you gave an inquiry statement, SBPI 128, on the 21st of February this year, and that was taken by a member of the inquiry team. And if we look at the last page, paragraph 120, you'll see it says, I believe the facts stated in this witness statement are true. I understand that this statement may form part of the evidence before the inquiry and be published on the inquiry's website. And then it's been signed, as I understand it, on every page by you.
Yes.
You'll see on the screen your signature's actually been redacted, although it says you signed it on the 24th of May this year. But on your hard copy, you should see your signature.
Yes. That's it.
That's great. And if we look at your inquiry statement, paragraphs 18 and 19,
That's all right, isn't it?
you've been very firm. You say, I'm a firm believer there's no point in lying about stuff. Sorry, I'll let you get that. It's also on the screen.
Right, yep. Sorry.
Because this stuff will come back and catch you out. If somebody doesn't get the answer they want to hear, you've told them the truth, and there's not going to be any comeback because I've not lied. You didn't lie. Lying's what gets you tripped up, gets you caught out. It's not worth it in this job. I've got less than 3 years till I retire, and it's not worth anything that's going to risk me losing my job, irrespective of what it relates to. I've stuck with that all through my service, and that's how you feel about things.
Yes. Tell the truth at all times.
Thank you. And then at paragraph 19, I've been asked if my memory would be better when I gave the statements than it is now. And that'll be the PERC statements we've looked at. 100% yes. I would say that what's on the statements given nearer the time would be more accurate. With the passage of time, 7 years, any information I've given at the time was fresher in my memory, and I would stand by the PERC statements as the best recollection of what happened.
Yes.
And you agree with that? And we'll go through some of the details as we go through matters. But during the giving the inquiry statement, you were asked to look at a number of passages from other statements, and you've commented on those. And we've got your comments in the inquiry statement. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. So hopefully you'll have everything that you need as we go through this. And I'd like to start with paragraphs 4 and 5 of your inquiry statement. And you've given some information in these paragraphs. In summary, you were doing the custody duty on the 3rd of May 2015.
Yes.
And you actually were a member of Response Team 4 in Kirkcaldy Police Office.
Yes.
But you'd been seconded to custody duty that day.
That's correct, yes.
Had you been doing that for a while before the 3rd of May?
I've been custody trained since roughly 2013, and I've had various stints at Dunfermline Police Station and Kirkcaldy Police Station on year-long secondments, and various times throughout that, if custody division have been short-staffed, I would get called in to cover shifts.
How long had you been working the custody shift in Kirkcaldy by the 3rd of May 2015?
I think that 3rd of May was my first day of, I think it was my 2-day secondment. It was a couple of days I was required at that point. So we started at 7 o'clock that morning.
That was your first day in Kirkcaldy on duty?
Yeah, I think that was the first day of my set of shifts, yes.
Right. And you've worked with PC Walker, Peyton, Tomlinson, Short, and all the others in Response Team 4?
Yes, that's correct.
You know who they are?
Yes.
And when had you stopped being an active member of Response Team 4?
I'm trying to think, I think it was later on 2015 I also went to my year-long secondment in custody in Dunfermline. I think I was on Team 4 the whole time. I think it was 2015. But I was on Team 4 for a couple of years.
Right. So in May 2015, you hadn't quite finished your active service with that team?
No, still with that team, yes.
Still with that team. But doing the custody that day?
That day, custody, yes.
Thank you. You were also, I think we see in paragraphs 8 and 9, you were also a tutor constable at that time.
That's correct, yes.
And in fact, James McDonough was your probationer.
Yes.
That's fine. And can I ask you to look at paragraphs 14 and 15, please? Now it says there's a set-top radio in the Kirkcaldy Inquiry Office, because whoever covers the front desk, they've got access to the radios as well, because if there is a personal call coming in for a specific officer, they can shout them up on the radio. And then you mention there was a Lorraine Dewar that was on the 3rd of May 2015, covering the public reception desk. And she would hear what was being passed on the radio and access the call card. And part of her job is that if anybody comes in, she'd be creating a call card. Now there's a few sort of questions I'd like to ask just to explain the setup in Kirkcaldy in May 2015. So when you're talking about a set-top radio, we've heard some evidence about airwaves transmissions coming across radios that individual officers have on their uniform.
Yes.
What's this set-top radio and what does it do?
It's exactly the same as the airwave radio handheld that a police officer card, but it's a base unit. It's just a bigger version of the handheld radio.
So it's not a mobile one?
No,
it sits on the desk.
it would sit on the desk and it'd be permanently placed there.
So during the course of a day, is it possible for you as the custody officer to listen to airwaves transmissions that are being
Yes.
transmitted by officers at scenes?
Yes.
Thank you. So you could hear the airwaves transmissions over that set-top radio in the inquiry office?
Yes.
If you were in the
If you were in the
inquiry
office, yes.
Do you also have a radio yourself?
Yes, got my personal radio.
Can you hear airwaves transmissions on that radio as well as from the set-top radio?
Yes, you can.
So wherever you were in Kirkcaldy Police Office, you would still have your own personal radio?
Yes.
And what channel would you be tuned into on the 3rd of May 2015?
Kirkcaldy was Channel 3.
And did you at any time tune in to the channel that was dealing with the incident at Hayfield Road?
That was on Channel 3.
That was Channel 3. Right. And then Lorraine Dewar, you've talked about her being at the public reception desk. Now, is that separate from the inquiry office?
Inquiry office, receptionist, it's the same post. There's two offices in the one building. They have the custody office where all the custody staff work, and Lorraine Dewar, the inquiry desk, public receptionist. It's just that they're the same post.
Same sort of area.
Yes.
At that time in May 2015?
Yes.
I understand that there may have been changes to Kirkcaldy since May 2015. Obviously, the questions I ask, I'm interested in the way it was in May
Yes,
2015.
that part of the building still hasn't changed. The custody staff and the inquiry staff are in the same office.
Right. So Lorraine Dewar, is she a police officer?
No,
or
she's a civilian.
A civilian member of staff?
Yes.
Working in the public reception?
Yes.
Can she, from where she is at the public reception, can she hear the airwaves transmissions?
She has a radio beside her on her desk.
And you mentioned that she's got talking about these creating a call card.
Yes.
Explain to the chair what that work involves.
If someone was to want to report an incident to the police, either by phone, initially a call card would get created, so she would create an entry on the system. It would be time dated when the incident happened, who's reported it, and a general description of what the incident is. That would then get created on the system. It would then go to a filter, which our controller would then allocate an officer to attend and deal with that. Or if Lorraine was able to get someone in the station, she could create the initial entry, shout someone up on the radio to get an officer to attend, and they would then come down and speak to the personal caller at the station.
And is she typing these call cards?
When she creates new ones, yes, or any amendments that may come in for other call cards, so you can type updates on them.
There are other people creating call cards in other parts?
Yes, if you're a phone through 101 or 999, we'll have the people up there that they would create these incidents, but then allocate them out to the stations.
Is that the area control room?
Yes.
But in addition to that, there's Lorraine Dewar in the office itself.
Yes.
At the public reception desk. So if a member of the public came into Kirkcaldy Police Office to report something, Lorraine Dewar could prepare a call card?
Yes, she would get the initial details for her to create the call card, and she'd be able to put it on the system, and then it would go into the main filter where the call would get allocated to officers to attend and deal with.
Thank you. And where was your sort of base? You've talked about the reception desk, you've talked about the inquiry office. Where was your area for working when you were the custody officer?
In the office, there's like 5 or 6 desks in a square in the middle. Mm-hmm. And Lorraine would be down at the bottom end, closest to the entrance to the public entry. If anybody wants to come and speak to her, we would be at the other end of the room. But it's basically one big rectangle desk on the same building, same. As we're sitting just now, I'd be sitting directly opposite Lorraine if I was looking at you just now.
So where you were based, you could see Lorraine
Yes.
from where you were. Can I ask you to think back to May 2015? If someone, an officer, was coming into Kirkcaldy Police Office from the back of the police office, we've heard there's a back door that would lead towards an area where the canteen was.
Yes.
Can you describe to us how would that person come from the canteen towards the area where you're working?
They would, from the canteen, there's a corridor that leads basically towards the front of the building, and about 3/4 of the way down that corridor, there's another corridor that cuts down to the left. That would take you straight down to one door would lead to the public access area. Through a secured door, they would then get access into the inquiry office or the custody office.
Now, we may also be hearing about something called the primary charge bar and the secondary charge bar.
Yes.
Can you explain to the chair what the primary charge bar is?
It's basically the first charge bar. If you're booking one custody in, you'd always go to the primary one. It's the main. There's the second one is if you get really busy and have enough staff on, you can book multiple people in at the one time. So it saves a build-up of, if you've got multiple custodies getting brought in to get booked into the station, we can process them quicker to get them booked into the system by opening the 2 charge bars.
So primarily you'll use the primary charge
Yes.
bar, clue in the name there, primary. And you'll use that unless there's an overspill or it gets busier.
Yes.
And then use the secondary charge bar.
Yes.
Are you in charge of both areas in your job as the
The sergeant, the custody sergeant, be overall charge of what our staff were working in the custody area, and he would make a decision if we're busy enough to need to open up the second charge bar as well. But it ultimately be the sergeant's decision. He's in charge.
Now, we might also hear about something called the cell corridor. And I'm interested, where in relation to the primary charge bar is the cell corridor?
Where the charge bar is, it's situated on the right-hand corner, and basically directly, if you're looking straight at it on the left, there's a gate that goes through there, and that's where all the male cells are.
So it's very close to through a gate,
yes.
as you say. Thank you. Now, can I ask you to look at paragraph 26 of your inquiry statement? I think you say there that a call came in about a male walking down the street with knives. You heard response teams running out of the office because they have to run down wooden floors. When you're down the stairs, you can hear everybody. I think everybody that was in the station went running out. I'd left my radio in the offices. Could you hear that there was a call coming in from the radio, the set-top radio?
At the time, had I been in the office, I would have heard the call. But I think at that time, when they went running out, I was in the custody area itself, down near the custody, where I was doing a check on custodies. I just heard the sound of people running out, so I knew something was happening, but I didn't have my radio. I'd been left it on my desk.
When you say you were in the custody area, is that the primary charge bar area or the cell corridor?
Down where the cells are, because we'll do, at that time in the morning, we do welfare checks on the custodies that are in. It's usual first visit of the day, we go around, make sure everybody's okay, any concerns, any issues, and update the cell sheets saying that they've had a morning visit and that there's no issues.
So the individual cells that you have in Kirkcaldy Police Office, that would be called the custody area, because
Yes.
the custodies who've come in are secured in the cells?
Yes.
Thank you. And you say at paragraph 28, you went to ask Lorraine Dewar at the front desk where everybody was going to. That was nosiness, if nothing else, because it's my shift who are going. And that's when I was told it was possibly the male walking down the road carrying a knife. So you've heard the noise, you've heard officers leaving the building, and you've asked Lorraine, and Lorraine's doing the calls. We may hear of something called storm
Yes.
cards. Is that the system?
Storm call card, it's the same
storm
thing.
call card.
Yes.
Same thing. So she's working on that at the desk, and you go and ask her. So you've got access to the airwaves transmissions, you've got access to Lorraine, and she has or is creating or has access to the storm call cards. And do you also have access to the call cards?
Yes.
Now, you mention, I think in paragraph 35 to 38 of your inquiry statement, that you have access to the call cards as well, unless something happens and they get made restricted, and then it's only certain people that can access them. And once the seriousness of what happened to the male became known, that's Mr. Bio, they restricted the call cards, so then that was it. We've then not got access, and it's only certain people that have access to the call card.
Yes.
So the position with the call cards is you have access at first, unless that's changed.
Yes.
And is that if a major incident is declared?
It could be, depending on the nature of the people involved, it may well be it's police officers, maybe politicians, important people that we don't need to know about. It's not anything's going to affect us, so it's not in our interest to see the thing as well, so they restrict them from only staff officers at a higher level that it'll be them that will be dealing with it.
Who makes that sort of decision? Is it a senior officer?
It's a senior officer that makes that decision, yes.
Do you remember when these call cards became restricted on the 3rd of May 2015?
Off the top of my head, no. I couldn't even guess. It didn't go on for hours then before it was restricted. I think it was quite quickly once the nature of the incident came known, that what had happened to Mr. Bayou, that it got restricted.
When you say when it became known what had happened to him, are you talking about after he was known to have died?
No, before then. Once he had the injuries and they say they were starting the CPR, there was a serious enough event that the call card get restricted, so that just for one to stop people looking for nosiness.
So you had access to the call cards, as did Lorraine,
Yes.
until
The decision was
CPR
made.
started, and then from that moment, you were no longer able to secure access to them. Had you wanted to,
If I'd wanted to, I couldn't do it then.
couldn't
No.
have done it. Thank you. Can I ask you to look at some storm call cards? So let's look at, we have two, but I'd like you to look at PS 00231, please. And do you recognise the document that's come up on the screen?
As a call card, yes.
So this is a call card. It doesn't actually say that at the top. It says Police Scotland ISR report. But this is what you're referring to when you talk about a call card.
Yes.
Or a storm call
Storm
card.
call card, yes.
Right. I'd like to just look very briefly through some of these entries. If we could look first of all at page 2 of the call card. Thank you. And we see at the no, sorry. I'd like could we have a look at 231 instead, please? Sorry, I think I've given you the wrong number, Miss Drury. 231. That's it, on page 2. That's it. We'll have this, so it's 232. And page 2, do you see at the top we see in block capitals, male in possession of large knife, a black male wearing white t-shirt, no jacket, walking along the street with a large knife in right hand, about 9-inch blade, walking in the direction of the hospital, walking quickly, more. And that is on the 3rd of May 2015 at 7:15:42. And so these are the types of call cards that are created when a call has come in.
Yes.
Thank you. And if we look further down that page, it's 7:22:15. We see male down on ground, one officer possibly injured. And then at 7:24:07, from PI Stewart, monitoring incident, aware that male detained and secured, and the officers reported to have been assaulted by being punched to rear of head, no weapons used. So does that appear, we've heard about an Inspector Stewart at ACR. Does it appear that entries in these call cards are not just coming from officers at the scene,
No.
or from telephone calls, 999 calls into ACR? They're actually also containing information from other officers.
Yes. Obviously, if police were passing anything back on the radio, the person on the end of the radio that's receiving his message will be updating the call card as they go. So anything that gets passed back gets recorded.
So the information that is more widely available is actually on these.
Yes.
So that would explain, would it not? We've been looking through airwaves transmissions, but there seems to be more information in these than there is on the airwaves transmissions. But that would be because the source of this information in the call cards is much wider
Yes.
than just the officers.
Because
at
the
the
initial
scene.
entry is going to be from the person that phoned it in, so they give the brief stuff, and then any updates that officers on scene would pass back, they would also then get updated onto the same call card.
Thank you. And then at the bottom of that page, we will see at 7:27:40, it says, male attacked, PC short violently, suspect has been sprayed and battened. So that's at 7:27:40. And then if we can go over onto the next page. And do we see on this page that 7:30:14, you see the time? Male is now not breathing and commencing CPR at that time. And then at 7:31:10, what does that say? Is it EOV ambulance now updated? Or is it F?
I think it's EOV.
Do you know what that stands for?
No.
No. With the suspect's current condition and requested to attend as soon as possible. So it would appear that an ambulance had been requested. That's 7:31:10. And then 7:31:26, ambulance updated that the casualty is no longer breathing and CPR is being carried. Is it fair to say that if there's an airways transmission from the scene of an incident, that might happen before these call cards are actually created, that there'd be a time difference between the two?
Between it getting passed on the radio and the person typing it on, there could be a delay. Might be seconds, but it shouldn't be a long delay between someone passing back a message on the radio and the call card getting updated.
So there'll be some delay for transmission, but it shouldn't be too long.
Yes.
Thank you. And then at 7:32:30, it says CPR has commenced, but he is not breathing. Do you see that there?
Yes.
7:32:30. And then in the next page, please. At 7:47:42, do you see that?
Yep.
PC Payton and Walker are fine and back at station. So back at 7:47:42. And then below that, PS Maxwell, we've heard is Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell, returning to station to carry out basic trim. DS Davidson off a locus arranging resilience cover to attend from other areas in the division, and that was at 7:49:36. And then at 7:59:42, which is slightly down, see, please contact DI Robson and release a media disclosure with relevant details about closure of Hayfield Road to relieve traffic conditions. You see that?
Yes.
At this stage, did you still have access to the call
No.
cards?
No.
So had that stopped after the CPR?
I think it just we've been round about the same time. Once obviously they realised the seriousness of the nature, the incident that was ongoing, that was when they would restrict it. That we don't need, that doesn't need to be out there for everybody to have a look at.
Right, thank you. Can I ask you to look at paragraph 40, please, in your inquiry statement now? So you say there the incident's going on about 7, back of 7 in the morning. They never got back into the station until I want to say early afternoon, but I can't be sure of the time. It was certainly hours before they came back. Now, I've just shown you the storm call card saying that Payton and Maxwell and Walker were back before 8 in the morning. Is it possible that you're mistaken in paragraph 40? Yeah.
Yes.
So it wasn't the case that they were back later that day? From the call cards, it would appear.
From the call card, I would say they've been back sooner, but because I'm in a different part of the building where they were, I didn't know when exactly they came back. I just assumed it was later on. So
you didn't have access to the call cards after a certain moment in time?
Yes.
And you're not at the part of the building where officers have returned?
No, they're a completely different part of the building to us.
Thank you. Can I ask you to look at paragraphs 41 to 44? It might be easier for you to look at the hard copy, but we'll certainly see these on the screen. And you were told when the cops are coming back, they're going to go into the canteen and we've not to interact. We've not to go and speak to them. We've not to talk about anything that's went on. I can't remember who told us not to speak to them. Now, you say you can't remember who told you that. Do you remember if it was a senior officer?
It would have been. It would have
Who
been a
were the
senior.
senior officers that day?
I believe it was the DI Colin Robson that ended up coming into the station that day, so he was the one that was who passed that information on.
At paragraph 43, you say, seeing that now I remember Colin Robson, it was him that came into the front office and told us that. Is that the office where you and Lorraine Dewar are
Yes.
working? I think he was actually based at Glenrothes at the time, and he was the most senior person that was on duty. Basically, he's taken over all control of what's happened, so he's just come on and basically passed that information on to us. So, from your perspective, Constable Geddes, Colin Robinson was the senior officer
At that
in
time.
Kirkcaldy Police Office that day.
At that time, yes.
So he was in charge. Thank you. And he was the one that passed information to you not to speak to any of the officers, not to discuss it with them.
Mhm.
Thank you. Now, we've heard about some other senior officers that were in Kirkcaldy that day. Can I ask you just about them? Did you have any contact with Pat Campbell?
I don't think so. Can't say I remember.
Conrad Trickett? And Nicola Shepherd?
I know her personally from the job, but I don't remember seeing her that day. But I don't think I had an involvement with her then.
Okay. Stephen Kay?
I remember seeing him in the station at one point, but I don't think I've spoke to him.
And Gary McEwen?
Did see him.
Did you have any involvement with any of them?
No, other than Sergeant Maxwell needed to borrow a radio for Gary McEwen, so he borrowed my airwave radio. So that was about 3 days before I got that back again. So because he's come in, he didn't have a radio, so if he needed to communicate with people, so he borrowed mine.
We'll come on to that. I think you do mention that in your inquiry statement. Now, you've said in paragraph 44, if we could just look at that, that DI Colin Robson was a DI from the CID. It was going to be his team. We were just getting told that there's going to be witnesses coming into the station. It's a branch of the CID, but not quite the CID. It's just sort of a step below them. It's for stuff that's possibly not quite serious enough. Could you explain to the chair what you mean by that?
It's the crime team. They are a version of a department part of the CID, but they'll not necessarily deal with the same crimes that the CID would deal with. Just possibly a step below what they did, not quite serious enough. That's probably the best way I
An
could describe it.
intermediate level?
Yes, they're sort of in the same department as them, but a slightly lower level.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you some questions about some CCTV and some transcripts. I know you've gone through quite a lot of that in your inquiry statement. So I would like you to have copies of documents in front of you, because when I'm showing the CCTV footage, that'll be on the screen, but you won't be able to have the transcript on the screen at the same time. So I've arranged for you to have 3 sets of transcripts in front of you. Now, and the chair also should have those in front of him. So we're all working from the same documents. Can I just go through these, just so we know what we've got? So you'll see at the top of PERC 01463 that it says it's a CCTV audio and visual timeline for camera 12 at Kirkcaldy Police Office. Now, we'll be looking at this in a moment, but we'll see some footage, and this should be a cell corridor. So camera 12 is a camera in a fixed point that shows the cell corridor. And you've said that's the custody area, it's
Yes.
also known as that. And then you'll see COPFS 05963 is the CCTV audio and visual timeline for camera 14 for Kirkcaldy Police Office. Have you got that as well?
Yes.
That will, here in a moment, should be for the primary charge bar. So that's the area you've told us most custodies will go to first and foremost, before they're moved to the custody area, the cell corridor.
Yes.
Is that right? And they're closely joined to each other.
Yes.
And then the third is PERC 041472, and that's an audio and visual timeline for camera 15, which we'll hear is for the secondary charge bar. Now, is the secondary charge bar also quite close to the primary charge bar?
It's about as far as from here to that wall away.
Right.
It's not very far.
So not far at all. So you'll see we've got camera 12, the cell corridor, camera 14, the primary charge bar, and camera 15, the secondary charge bar. And we'll use these as we go through the CCTV. Can I start, please, just by looking at a transcript, just to familiarise ourselves with what we have here. I'd like to look at PERC 01463, which is the transcript for camera 12, which is the cell corridor.
01463, is that right?
PERC 01463.
Yes, I have that, thank you.
Sorry.
My mistake.
So that should say at the top camera 12, and this should be the cell corridor. And I'd like just to look at pages 2 and 3. I'm not going to play this footage, but just to let us look at the transcript. You'll see at the bottom on the right-hand side, there's just the words page 2 of 55 is written. We can see that on the screen. And opposite 71904, you'll see that the content is given as PC Geddes enters cell corridor carrying out custody duties. And then at 71934, PC Hay indicates that he hears something over his airwave. And if we go on to page 3 of 55, and it's his airwave terminal, to the effect that officer injured. A conversation then ensues, resulting in PC Hay requesting to be able to attend the call. And at 7:19:56, PC Geddes exits cell corridor. And then at 7:20:26, PC Geddes enters cell corridor together with PC Coburn and PC Harris. And then there's a discussion with PC Hay being heard at this time, providing updates from his airwave terminal that indicate that an officer has been punched to the head. And then at 07:20:40, PC Harris can be heard saying the name Ashley. 07:20:52, PC Hay can be heard conversing with PC Geddes. He appears to be asking PC Geddes to go with him to the incident. And at 07:21:10, PC Hay exits the cell corridor. And we can just leave that there for the moment. And then can we look at camera 15? So this is the transcript, PERC 01472, for camera 15. And I'll ask you to look at pages 3 and 4 of that transcript. If we start at 3. Now this is the transcript from the secondary charge bar. And you'll see again at the bottom of page 3, 7:21:16, PC Hay seen to run through, and then if we move on to the secondary charge bar area and exits out the main door of the custody facility. Do you see that?
On the screen, yes.
Yeah. So this transcript seems to record from CCTV to CCTV cameras, the first in the cell corridor, and the second at the secondary charge bar seems to record PC Hay hearing the airwaves transmission about an officer injured and exiting, making his way out of Kirkcaldy Police Office to go and attend the incident. And do you remember that, PC Hay going to attend the incident?
Yes, because I remember he asked me to go with him.
Yeah.
But I was on custody duties that day, so I couldn't leave the station.
Yeah. So you, and your responsibility, your role as custody officer is to remain with the custodies.
Yes.
Who are people who are in custody in the cell corridor.
Yes.
And it's not open to you to simply rejoin the response team and go
No,
and attend
that
an
would have to be a
incident.
decision made by a supervisor to relieve me of the duties and ask me to do other ones.
So if when a call comes over the airwaves, all units, that does not include you
No.
or officers stationed or based in Kirkcaldy Police Office.
Depending on the role, in custody, it wouldn't affect us, because had there been any police officers, whether by CID uniformed or that was available in the station, if a call goes to any officers to assist, it's basically response officers that can attend to that, as in CID in plain clothes that might have been available in the station.
Thank you. Right, I'd like to move to a period of time that is covered by some of these transcripts, which is 7:35 on the 3rd of May. And the first thing I'd like to look at is the transcript for PERC 01472. This is the transcript for camera 15. And I'd like to look, first of all, at pages 4 and 5. So this is camera 15, which is the secondary charge bar. And I'd like to begin at page 4, moving on to page 5. And I'd like to look at the time that starts 07:35:10, which is at the bottom of page 4. Do you have that?
Yes.
Does the chair have that? Yes, thank you. So let's just look at this transcript first of all before I play this clip. It says 07:35:10, PC Geddes enters secondary charge bar area. He can be heard talking to PC Harris. PC Harris is out of camera view. PC Geddes, and this is in speech marks, quotation marks, it's one of the female officers that's been assaulted and hit 2 or 3 to the head and body. And then PC Harris, it's inaudible. And then PC Geddes, I'll know yet, inaudible. The boy gone unresponsive, getting CPR, so they're taking him to the hospital. PC Geddes exits main door of custody facility. So you'll see that's a short part of this transcript. And what I'm going to do now is ask Ms. Drury to play a clip. Now, as we play this clip, you'll see it's quite a short clip. The audio will not be perfect, but you have the transcript in front of you to see what can be gleaned from the audio. But you can also listen to it as we play it.
Yes.
Can we just stop it there for a second? As we look at this, I've been saying to you this is camera 15, and this should be the secondary charge bar. Do you recognise this as the secondary charge bar?
Yes, it is, yep.
And you'll see that the sort of desk area or the bar area curves round towards the right-hand side of the screen. There's a door at the top, a blue door at the top of this screen. Where does that lead?
That takes you out of the custody area, and there's like the small corridor that leads into the inquiry office, the custody office, where we're based out of, along with Lorraine.
So Lorraine would be through that door,
Yes.
through a corridor. To the left of what we see here on this camera, what's at that side?
That to the left, the door, or to the left of?
To
if
the
you-
to the left-hand side.
Keep going to the left where I headed, that would then take you through to the main charge bar and to the doctor's room, which is diagonally opposite that
So
door.
the primary charge bar
Primary charge
would be
bar,
to the
yes.
left.
Yep, if you kept on going
This
down that
is the
corridor.
secondary charge
Yes.
bar. And the door on the far right-hand side at the top of the screen, what does that lead to?
That leads out the short corridor that leads to the front office. And
So if you wanted to leave the building, would that be a route out?
it would be not the quickest route to get out of the building, but it's one way. It's certainly the area that would get you out of the custody part of the station.
If you wanted to get to the cell corridor or the custody area, where is that in relation to what we see here?
Well, the cell corridor's just outside that door. It's the
Which door
the
are
door
you
on the right in the
talking
top corner.
The door on the right and the
Yeah.
top-hand corner.
Yep.
So that would lead to the cell corridor.
It's the cell corridor that leads access to the inquiry office and to the interview rooms and the fingerprint suite.
Thank you. And on the far left, out of camera, that would be the primary charge bar.
Yes.
And this area is the secondary charge
Yes.
bar. Thank you. And you'll see at the bottom there's a time given, and the time is 3rd of May 2015, 7:35 and 14 seconds.
Yes.
Right. So if we could just go back to the beginning of this clip, and we'll just play this just until, just for less than a minute. Thank you.
Female also been assaulted 2 or 3 times in the body. I don't know yet, but I answered the boys department when non-responsive getting CPR. Oh, right. So taking away to the hospital.
Thank you. Who was that we could see on the screen?
That was me.
That was you.
That was me walking out the door, yes.
So moving from the primary charge bar towards the custody area,
Yes.
and having a conversation. So looking at that transcript, do you agree with what what's been gleaned there from the conversation?
Yes.
Yeah. There's areas where it's inaudible. Do you remember what PC Harris was saying?
No.
No. Right. Can I ask you some questions about this? You say there it's one of the female officers that's been assaulted and hit 2 or 3 to the head and body. Where had you obtained that information from?
That would have been passed back over the radio. So, say it had been passed on the radio in the front office, or Lorraine Dewar had been picked it up, been passed over the radio. So, one place that would have come from. So, if it's either when I've been in the front office, I've heard it on the radio when I've been in the front office, or it's been passed on to me from someone else in the front office that's heard it coming over the radio.
So either from the airwaves transmissions, which you can hear over the radio,
Yes.
either your own or the set-top
Yes.
one, or from Lorraine Dewar, who's doing the
Who's sitting next to the radio the whole time
the
anyway.
storm,
could
and
hear.
she's doing the storm cards. So either from the airwaves or the storm cards. Now, can I ask you, without taking you to them, I can if you want, it's not on the storm cards that she had been hit 2 or 3 times on the head, and I don't see anything in the airwaves transmission that she's been hit 2 or 3 times on the head. Now, do you remember where that information came from? You said hit 2 or 3 to the head and body. It may not be Nicole Short, it may be something else that you're referring to.
I would say it's referring to that incident that happened there. But then if it's not in the call cards, then I don't know why it wouldn't be typed up, because the only place I would hear it had been passed over airwaves, or someone else had heard it passed over airwaves when I wasn't there.
Right.
If we'd been in the station, we weren't there, so the only place we were getting any information was being passed over airwaves.
So could it have been that it was Mr. Bile that had been hit 2 or 3 times to the head?
Well, if it's saying on there, I've said there's a female that's been hit, I wouldn't mix up a female for a male.
Right. So this is a recording from 7:35 in the morning. The officers aren't back from Hayfield Road at that time. So that, as far as you're concerned, the only source of information you have is the airwaves or the storm cards.
Yes.
Is there any other source of information
Not to me,
that
no.
you could have?
No.
What about Lorraine Dewar? Is there any other source of information she could have?
No, she would be the same. She would be getting anything from what's passed on the radio or what's on the call cards.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then it says, I'll no yet, the boy gone unresponsive getting CPR. Now, we looked at the storm call cards a moment ago, and you may remember on page 3 it said he was unresponsive and CPR had started. So could that information have come from the storm card?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we look at 8:07, and if we look at the transcript for camera 12, and this will be for page 7 and 8. So this is a slightly later period of time, 8:07. Now, we know by this time from the storm card that Walker and Payton have returned and Maxwell have returned, although you've indicated you weren't aware of that at that stage. So page 7 of the transcript for camera 12 being the cell corridor, which I'll play in a moment. But you'll see on page 7 it says, PC Geddes battened to the head by a cop. They'd reckoned he'd had a big machete type blade. He's been coming at the cops. They CS'd and pavaed him. Apparently he just went ha-ha, gestures with his left hand to his face, implying that he's wiping something from his face, and kept coming with the knife, straight for the weeest lassie. Nicole Short is about this height, gestures with his right hand a little under his shoulder height. Short by Harris, yeah. PC Geddes went straight for her. She'd been knocked to the ground, he's been stamping on her, and Ash has then battened him. Seems to have battened him to the head. PC Harris, unlucky, he's used lethal force. PC Geddes, I know. PC Harris, he's got a machete, fuck him. PC Geddes, there's about a dozen, loads of members of the public have phoned up about it. By a dinny, how the fuck's Ash going to feel about the fact? PC Harris, yeah. PC Geddes, guilt. PC Harris, is Ash male or female? PC Geddes, it's a boy, aye. Every time he sends for uniform, they send him female stuff. Ashley Tomlinson, his name is. PC Harris laughs, and PC Geddes continues talking, but goes out of camera view as he appears to leave the cell corridor. So just looking at that for a moment, I'm going to ask in a moment Miss Drury to play a clip, and this is from camera 12. When she locates the clip, I'm going to ask her to pause it immediately, and we'll just familiarise ourselves with the screen. Right, if we could just stop there for a moment. Oh well, sorry. It's 8:07 that I'm interested in. Thank you, this is perfect. So if we just pause there. So this should be camera 12, and it should be showing us the cell corridor. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we can see cells on the left-hand side going away into the distance as we look at this. An officer sitting on the left beside the cells. And is that you in the middle there standing up?
Yes, it is.
And from this location, where would the door be to the secondary charge bar?
If you see in the bottom right-hand corner, you can just make out the bottom of a gate.
Yes.
As soon as you go back through there, that takes you directly to the primary charge bar, and then again straight through that gate, you turn right, it takes you back out to the secondary one.
So could you say that again, please? So the primary charge bar, if you wanted to go to the primary charge bar from this...
From where I'm standing there,
Yeah.
in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can make out the bottom of a gate. That's opened against the wall. You go through that opening through the gate, that takes you to the primary charge bar.
Right.
And then primary charge bar directly in front of you is the secondary one.
Thank you. And we may see later that there is a storeroom, or here...
Yes, that's... You can see where that black bucket is.
There's a black bucket and a red sort of trolley.
It's a trolley
thing.
for the dirty laundry.
Dirty laundry.
Just between them, you'll see there's a door. That's where the storeroom is.
And is that a storeroom that officers can have access to?
Yes, we would store plastic cups for water for custodies, and sometimes officers would come down and acquire them for cups of tea for themselves.
Thank you. So I'd like to play this clip until, just again, for roughly around a minute, please. Thank you.
The boy, he's got a big machete type boy. He's been coming at the cops of CS from a father and a partner issue. Kept coming with the knife straight to the weeest lads, and the coke shots were this side. Went straight to her. She'd been knocked to the ground, he'd been stamping her. And Ash is in it, bottom up. So he's gone to the head.
Unlucky. He's using lethal force. He's
I know.
fucking...
There's loads of members of the public that have phoned up about that. I mean, who the fuck's Ash going to feel?
Yeah.
He's got to be fucking killing over there.
Ash, well,
It's a boy. Everything he says, there's uniforms, send them female stuff, Ashley Tomlinson is the keeper. That's a new pair of trousers and female trousers. That's a new outfit.
Thank you. So that's a clip from that camera 12 in the cell corridor. And you saw the transcript a moment ago. Can we look at paragraph 69 of your inquiry statement, please? And I think you were asked about this clip, or the transcript of this clip. And you say, I've been asked where I got this information from. I sound like I'm trying to blame Lorraine for a lot of stuff here. She's sitting in front of the computer. She's seeing all the call cards. Anytime we've gone in, she's given us updates on what's been happening. So at this point, 8:07, do you still have access to the call cards, at least through Lorraine?
I'm not sure if I still had it at that point. I don't know.
Right. So if we look at the transcript again, see page 7 of the camera 12 transcript. And if you didn't have access to the call cards, so this is perk 01463. You see where you say to the other officer, battened to the head by a cop. They'd reckoned he'd had a big machete-type blade. He's been coming at the cops. They CS'd and pavaed him. And he just went, ha-ha, and you're seen wiping something from your face. And he kept coming with a knife, straight for the weeest lassie, Nicole Short, who's about this height. Where did that information come from?
At that time, that was the only place I was getting. I was from Lorraine, and
From
from
Lorraine.
Lorraine Dure.
What about the airwaves messages that you were listening to on the radio?
It would depend if I had my radio, because going back and forward into the cells, I didn't always take my radio. Sometimes it was left at my desk, and I didn't always have it with me. So if I don't know if that would have been passed over the radio or not. I would.
So, again, sources of information. Lorraine, you think first and foremost, who was getting information from the call cards? Or maybe from your own radio, if
yes.
you had it with you at any given time. Right. What about the gestures? You're saying gestures. You'll see that you gestured with your hand, implying that he was wiping something from his face. Are you suggesting that that information came from Lorraine or the call cards?
I wouldn't be on the call card, something like that. So the only place I would have got that would have been from Lorraine. But now I can't remember where that came from, but because I've not spoke to any of the officers, anybody else about that yet.
We've heard that Maxwell and Peyton and Walker are back, according to the storm call cards, by this time. They're back before 8. Is it possible that you could have spoken to any of them before 8 about this incident?
It is possible, but unfortunately I can't recall if I did speak to them or not, because it would certainly make more sense to decide that they would be someone who'd have that information rather than Lorraine.
I think certainly with the gestures, it's difficult to see how that information could have been shared over the call cards.
That information would not be on call cards.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then it says at the bottom of that page, went straight for her, she'd been knocked to the ground, he's been stamping on her, and Ash has then battened him, seems to have battened him to the head. And again, where would that information have come from?
It wouldn't be on the call card again, it's either come from Lorraine. Or, as in, if I have spoken to any of the people that were there, it would have come from them, but honestly, I don't recall where that came from.
Right. In fairness to you, Constable Geddes, can we look at the transcript, the combined audio and visual transcript, which is the spreadsheet you have in front of you? Oh, you maybe don't have it at the moment. Here we go. Could we look at page 8? Now, we've heard about these airwave transmissions. So this is from Hayfield Road. And you'll see on page 8, there's one at 7:26:52. And it's an airwaves transmission from Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell that says, just for the log, the initial on attendance, this male's attacked PC Short quite violently. As a result, he was sprayed with CS and Pava and battened. There may be a suggestion that he's been battened to the head area. Now, we've heard evidence that this information is inaccurate, but it was an airwaves transmission at 7:26 on the 3rd of May. Now, that is prior to 8:07, the transcript that we were looking at a moment ago. Is it possible that you listened to that airwaves transmission?
It's possible, yes.
As well as getting information from Lorraine?
It's or if Lorraine had got the information, she's passed. If I've been out of the office doing checks, and if I've missed that transmission, she might have made me aware of that.
Right, thank you. And in relation to the stamping on her and then Ash battened him, can we look at page 7 of the spreadsheet? You'll see again that 7:24:28 on page 7. Again, Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell. You'll see, although there's no visible injuries to PC Short, she's been stomped to the body a few times, etc., and struck to the head. Can see if ambulance can attend as soon as possible. So there was mention there of being stomped to the body. Is it possible that you heard that transmission?
Yeah, it's possible, yes.
Right. Or have been that's been shared with Lorraine?
With me when I've been in the front office.
Right. And then PC Harris at the bottom of page 7 of this transcript says, unlucky he's used lethal force, and you say, I know. What did you mean agreeing with PC Harris about lethal force? What do you understand that to be?
I took it from when he said he's struck him to the head, which is potentially be a cause of lethal incident. Could kill someone, seriously injure him.
Is that something that most police officers will know and be aware of?
It's one of the red zones when you get your officer safety. It's as a last resort, you would hit someone in a red zone. If you're concerned that what's going on is causing or likely to cause concern for another person's life, you're justifiable with hitting someone in a red zone with your baton to preserve someone else's life.
That's considered a last resort?
A last resort, yes.
Yeah. Because of the potential danger to the person?
Potential seriousness that the incident could happen if you strike someone with a baton to the head.
All right. Thank you. Can I look now at a slightly later time, 8:26? So if we go back to camera 12 transcript, which is perk 01463, and if we look at page 9 of that, and you'll see towards the top of that, 8:26:23, the voice of PC Geddes can be heard from out of camera view. Do you see that?
Yes.
At the top. PC Geddes, apparently there's no word yet, they're still working on him. And then there's some conversation, and then you're out of camera view, and 8:26:27, it's just a matter of time before he dies. Yeah. PC Lamb is there as well. PC Geddes enters cell corridor 8:27:17. And then PC Harris says something inaudible, and he says he was clinically dead for an hour. They brought him back. They kept him, then 24 hours. Do you know what he was talking about there?
But saying he's clinically dead, I would assume they were talking about Mr. Bow.
Was PC Harris talking about this incident or maybe a different incident?
I would take he's talking about this incident.
Right, okay. And then PC Geddes, that's what we're wondering now, because the ISIS attack and that on a female on Friday, big boy and something inaudible. And then PC Harris says ISIS staying in the station, and PC Geddes assists with cell checks, And then 8:27:45, Sergeant Maxwell observed in the cell corridor doorway, and Sergeant Maxwell can be heard shouting to PC Geddes, asking to borrow his airwave terminal. And then 8:28:02, Sergeant Maxwell exits the cell door, followed by PC Geddes towards the charge bar. So again, I'm just going to ask Miss Drury to play that clip, which is really only from 8:26 to 8:28. So it's a short clip, if we can watch that. And again, this is from camera 12, which is the cell corridor. And we'll see it just coming up at 8:26. And we'll listen to that. Thank you very much.
Hey?
Still working, but that's what I knew there was working on it. I think it's come on, I paid for it.
Yeah.
You okay?
When you were up on the other week, he was clinically dead for an hour, going back. He kept him there for 24 hours and then...
No, that's on the move because obviously with the dice that's starting to keep eating it. And twice this big body and then the CCTV body recorded it. I just find the reach
Thank you. So just looking again at the transcript for camera 12 on page 9. This is at 8:26, and in fairness to you, Constable Geddes, we did look at the storm cards earlier, and there was one that talked about them still being worked on by the hospital staff, and there was no further update at that stage. Is it possible that where you say apparently there's no word yet, they're still working on them, that came from the call cards?
Yes.
So either you still had access to them or Lorraine has shared that with you?
Yes.
And then you say it's a matter of time before he dies. So did you know at that stage that he was in a serious condition?
But that comment was yes, we did.
And turning on to page 10, you say, that's what we're wondering now because the ISIS attack and that on a female on Friday, big boy. Can you tell us what you meant when you referred to that?
I think that there was an intelligence briefing that came out saying that there's intelligence, don't know where it came from, it's part of the briefing we get at the start of every shift, that there was intelligence that a female police officer was going to be attacked. Didn't say any specific about where it was, whether it was even Kirkcaldy, but it comes through the police intelligence system, and that's the only place that information or that comment would have come from. That's the only place we would have picked that up from.
That was the Friday prior to the 3rd of May 2015?
I'm not sure what day of the week it was, but there was an intelligence. At the start of every shift when you have your briefing, you'll go through any previous intelligence that might have come in the day before, or if you've been off duty on your rest days, you'd all go through it so you get an update of any new intelligence come in. It could be related to anything, known shoplifter, any named suspects for shoplifting that they've got images of, just any intelligence that comes in that might be relevant to the officers that go about the day-to-day job. And that was one of the things that was mentioned, that someone's picked up on that.
It says on Friday, that's why I mentioned the word Friday. Do you think that's when the intelligence was made known to you?
Or it was going to happen on a Friday. But it may well have been made known to me on the Friday, but
Right.
I can't recall just now.
But your understanding was that there was some intelligence shared at some point with you about a female and an attack on a female.
Yes.
Now, we've heard some evidence already about this, and we've heard evidence that a search has been conducted and no such intelligence can be found. We've also heard other evidence that it was a rumour, a strong rumour going round Kirkcaldy Police Office, regardless of whether or not there was intelligence. Are you, you're telling us you thought it was intelligence?
It was intelligence. I was positive it was an intelligence briefing that information came from.
Do you remember who gave you that intelligence briefing?
Not at this point, no.
No. Do you remember how that was shared with you? We've heard about a muster, we've heard about emails and guidance being issued.
If it's been given the muster, if it's on an e-briefing, but you're saying that there was nothing on that e-briefing, I don't know then where it would have come up, because usually everything would go on the electronic briefing for the start of the shift for any intelligence comes in, because it would go to the Divisional Intelligence Office, who would read things, input it on the system for getting shared about, the same amongst all the shifts, all the stations.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned the ISIS attack. What was that a reference to? That's the words used on
Yes,
page 10.
I think there must have been some sort of ISIS attack around about that time happened in somewhere in the country. That's the only way I can think of that just now, because it's
Right.
can't be any more specific, unfortunately.
And why did you connect an ISIS attack with the incident at Hayfield Road?
I just mentioned it may have been an ISIS attack because there's the suggestion that a female officer has been getting targeted for it, and it may well have been ISIS.
So your connection was the ISIS attack on a female,
Yes,
and because we heard Nicole Short was injured,
yes,
that was the connection.
yes.
Was it anything to do with the fact that Mr. Bile was black?
No.
Can I ask you to look at your inquiry statement, please? Paragraphs 70 to 73. And you were asked about this section of the transcript and the CCTV. If we move on to 71, you say you don't know what the ISIS attack is, and it's certainly not a way I would talk to even say to somebody big boy. It's a derogatory term in terms of a rounder person, slagging people off. I would say from reading that there's going to be an attack on the Friday coming up. When you say it's not a way I would talk to even say to somebody big boy, that is what the transcript says you said.
It's not a phrase that I would use. I think when I had my previous hearing, I didn't have my statement in front of me, so I was only getting read small bits at a time, because that completely flung me when I've said the word big boy, because it's not a phrase that I use, and it's not until we then got further down and I saw the rest of what was in my statement, in the context that it came out a wee bit more that was part of a quote, that this is what the person said, whether it's a handle that they've used, a name, a nickname for themselves, and it was because that is not a phrase that I use.
Right, so this is said to be what you've said about the words big boy. When you mention a previous hearing, what are you talking about?
Well, previously hearing that phrase, you said, sorry.
No, you just said to me that at your previous hearing.
Oh, sorry, it was the last video one that this statement's from.
Oh, the clip that we've just looked at.
The clip that I looked at, sorry, you've lost me.
Will we start again?
Yeah, could this basically this statement here in the folder that this has come from, because I had no knowledge at the time. I'd said that until I got remembered. When
Right,
that
so
got
you,
read back to
you
me.
didn't remember seeing it,
No.
but now that you've looked at the transcript and seen the clip, you know that you said that.
I know that I've said that.
But do you remember why you said that or what you were referring to?
The only thing I would refer to that was what the intelligence was. That was part of the phrase that was used, the quote that was given, or whether that was the person's name. I don't know, but it was all in the one thing about Big Boy targeting a female officer.
So you think that the phrase big boy may have been part of the intelligence briefing?
Yes.
As maybe someone's name or a description?
Yes.
Seems quite an unusual phrase for someone to add to an intelligence briefing, but you think that could be the case?
Yes, because it's certainly not a phrase that I would use. It's not words that I would use.
So you think that you are quoting that from some other
Yes.
source? And then you say at 72, the only thing I can think of at the time, there's been terrorist attacks on the go, and it's whether there's some kind of connection between a black male being involved in an incident, and is there anybody going to link it to some sort of terrorist thing? So that does appear to say does seem to suggest, looking at that there, that the terrorist attack is being connected to a black male being involved.
Yes.
And when you say the only thing I can think of, are you saying that that is what you were thinking of, that there was this connection, or is there someone else that was making that connection?
I would say, I don't know, potentially that's me making that connection because of the intelligence that there is going to be a terrorist attack and connecting with a black male attacking someone.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is your inquiry statement that we're looking at, which was from February of this year. So you think the only thing you could think of was that there was this connection being made between the fact that Mr. Bile was a black male and possible terrorist attacks.
Yes.
And then you say at 73, I have been asked what I understood the comment ISIS staying in the station to mean, and whether that related to somebody who was being kept in the cells. No, I don't get it. I think it comes from something mentioned about the briefing that ISIS was going to attack a female officer. To my knowledge, we've not had anybody in the station because, for one, if anybody was linked to that, they'd be going straight through to Glasgow. The anti-terrorism unit's based through that way. So if anybody was arrested in relation to anything like that, they would not be coming to a local station. So Kirkcaldy Police Office is not seeing a lot of people who are accused of terrorist activity.
No.
And that's not something that you're dealing with in the cells.
No.
Ever.
Never.
Never. So if there had been any intelligence or connection between Mr. Bile and ISIS or such like, would you say that would go through to Glasgow?
Yes.
But it was the Kirkcaldy response team
It was a Kirkcaldy
that were
response team
dealing
that
with the
attended
matter.
it, yes.
Thank you. Can I ask you to look at paragraphs 75 and 76 of your inquiry statement? Now, we looked a moment ago at the transcript regarding Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell, and if we look at the transcript for camera 15, and you're asked about 828, which is on page 8. Well, it says here page 9 and 10, but on my copy you'll see at the bottom of page 8 of the transcript for camera 15, 828:04, Sergeant Maxwell and PC Geddes enter the secondary charge bar and exit out of the main door of the custody facility. And you'll remember just not that long ago, you told us about Sergeant Maxwell asking for a radio for Gary McEwen.
Yes.
And he came to you and spoke to you and asked you for that.
Yes.
Had you spoken to Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell prior to that conversation?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you speak to Sergeant Maxwell about the incident at Hayfield Road when you dealt with him about the radio for Gary McEwen?
No, not to my knowledge, no. I just went and gave him a radio and I came back into custody to continue the checks.
So that was really just about the radio and
Yes.
securing a radio for Garen Kuhn. No other extended conversation
No.
about the incident. Were you aware that Acting Police Sergeant Maxwell had been at Hayfield Road at that time?
Probably yes, I would say, because he was a sergeant on duty and he would have been out as well when all the other officers went out.
Okay, thank you. Can we look at, again, a slightly later period to move to 8:56? So this is prior to 9 o'clock. It's prior to Mr. Bio being pronounced life extinct. I'd like to begin with camera 12. So if we can look at the transcript for camera 12, which is the cell corridor. And if we look at pages 11 and 12, you'll see at the bottom of page 11 that the 8:56 and 30 seconds appears, and it says, PC Lamb followed by PC Geddes enter cell corridor, carrying out custody duties. PC Goburn, what's happening now? PC Geddes, this is at the top of page 12. The only good thing is he didn't have the knife in his hand when he attacked Nicole, gesturing with right hand. PC Lamb exits the cell corridor towards the charge bar, and then you see PC Geddes, he just walked up and hooked him up, inaudible, standing on his back, and then the other cop, he's about my size, gesturing with arms at his side. A little bit bigger, he was just trying to run at him and knock him out the way. He was bouncing off him. Apparently the boy seemed like, and it's inaudible, is he known to us, Geddes? Never heard of him, we've got a name, think who it might be, but dinna ken yet, never heard. And then Coburn says, nice quiet time in Kirkcaldy. So let me just ask you about this section. So this is the camera 12, and we're going to look at the clip, which is clip 6, I think now, Miss Drury. So it's 8:56, and again, it's a relatively short clip of just about a minute. So this is camera 12 of the cell corridor, and we'll see that we're coming on to a clip that will start at 8:56. Or 8:57, sorry. If we could just go back slightly. It's fine if it's slightly later, that's fine.
The only good thing is that if he did have a knife in his hand when he attacked Nicole, he didn't. Nah. They just walked up and hooked him up to the gun and started stamping on the bar. And the other cop was the master, is a bit bigger, he was just trying to run at him and knock him out of the way, he was bouncing off him. Patting the boy up. Look, it's seen a message like it's been up at the message, the boy's known that. Never heard of him. We've got a name, I think it might be. But again, yeah. Never heard of him. He's quiet time for good, eh? Okay, no.
Thank you. So again, that you see yourself there in that clip.
Yep.
Can we look, please, at paragraphs in your inquiry statement, 78 to 84, before I come and ask you about this. We start with 78. You'll see that you were asked about the transcript for camera 12, the cell corridor, and you'll see that you were asked about that passage that we've just looked at. And if we could move up the screen, please. Right. And you said in your inquiry statement you don't remember that conversation. If he's been talking about Craig, certainly the boy I described was that size bigger than me, that's Craig. Let's just look at the transcript for the moment before we go through the details in your inquiry statement. Can you look at page 12 of the camera 12 transcript? And you'll see the 8:57:19. And you say he just walked up and hooked him up. What does that mean?
To me, that would be just walked in and hit them if you've hooked somebody.
Who are you referring to hitting? Who?
I would also say that should be her, because the only thing weird is that it was a female officer that was hit, which was Nicole. So I don't know how I've said he just walked up and hooked him up. I don't know how it got from him, because all the information we had, it was a female officer that was assaulted.
Right. So who was doing the hitting?
From that, I would take it would be Mr. Bayou.
And you now think it wasn't him that got hooked, it was Miss Short,
Nicole
PC
Short.
Short. And then it's an audible and it says standing on his back. Can you explain what you meant by standing on his back?
I take that his should be a her. And been told that he'd been standing on the person's back.
You'd been told he, Mr. Bayou, had been standing on her back?
Yes.
Who told you that?
I can't recall who said that.
So this is at 8:57, it's before 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember who you'd had conversations with by this stage?
I know at one point, but I can't remember the time just now, I did speak to Craig Walker.
Mm-hmm.
But the only other people who had been in the office staff. So
I'm going to come on to the later periods. I'm going to take you through everything in chronological
Right,
order. So at this stage, we've no CCTV footage that shows you having a conversation with
Right.
PC Walker. It's before that time. So I'm wondering who would have shared that information with you about someone standing on his back?
it would the only person that would have been, because the only person that's given up to had been listening to radio check on the call card, who'd been Lorraine.
Right.
Lorraine Dewar.
And if there's no call cards or airwaves transmissions suggesting somebody had been standing on his back or standing on her back, you'll know that I referred you to the stomping, but no standing on someone's back. Where would that information have come from?
I don't know.
And then it says, and then the other cop, he's about my size, gesturing with his arms at his side. Who are you referring to when you say the other
That I
cop?
would say that would be Craig Walker.
Right. So are you similar heights with Craig
Yes.
Walker? Right. What height are you?
6'4".
We've heard that he's also 6'4". A little bit bigger. He was just trying to run at him and knock him out the way. Who told you that?
Again, the only person I think would be Lorraine.
Where would Lorraine be getting that information?
I don't know. There's certainly nothing to be on the call card, so I don't know where Lorraine was getting it. If it was even her that told me that.
Who else could it have been?
I don't know.
So somebody shared information with you that he was just trying to run at him. Who's the he in that discussion?
The he that he was trying to run at him would be Craig.
Craig Walker.
Craig Walker.
And run at him,
Which would be Mr. Bayou.
Mr. Bayou, and knock him out the way. That would be Craig Walker knocking Mr. Bayou
Yes,
out the
because
way.
he's standing on the back of the cop.
And then it says he was bouncing off him. What does that mean?
It couldn't knock him off because he was just too strong. He's bouncing off.
Craig Walker was bouncing off Mr. Bayou.
Mm-hmm.
And again, who gave you that information?
Again, I don't know. The only place it could... I'm guessing it could have been Lorraine because she's the only person that was...
Right. There is nothing in the call cards or the airwaves transmissions that mentions that someone was bouncing off somebody else. So you think that that would be information from Lorraine?
Possibly.
And where would she get that information?
Again, I don't know.
You don't know. Right. And then you say at the bottom of that page, never heard of him, we've got a name, think who it might be. By this time, 8:57, before 9 o'clock, were you aware that the police had a name for Mr. Bayou?
At this time, yes.
So you were aware of that at that stage? Prior to him dying, we've heard he wasn't pronounced life extinct until after 9 o'clock. Right. Who gave you the information that you had a name for Mr. Bio?
Again, I don't know. I can't recall.
Is basically everybody is this the talk of the steamy? Is everyone talking about what's going on in Hayfield Road?
I would say everybody that was in the station that had been out would have been talking about it, yes.
So anyone you're coming into contact with or other people, they're just talking about this? Yeah. Can we look at a slightly later period after?
I'll give the stenographer a 10-minute break.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yes, Ms Graham.
Thank you. Before I move on to the events after 10:30 that morning, the breaks allowed me to check something. So could I ask you to look at PERC statement 00367 by Lorraine Dewar, please? Sorry. It's on the playlist. We may not have the facility to bring it up on the screen, but if you give me a moment, I'll just read out the section. For those who do have access to it at the moment, it's PERC 00367 and it's page 3, paragraph 10. I'm going to read it out to you. So this is a statement given by Lorraine Dewar to PERC about the events on the 3rd of May 2015. You have asked me regarding general discussion about the incident in the front office. Yes, there was only general discussion. We didn't know any details. The only other information we knew about the incident is what we heard on the radio unit in the front office. So she's talking about general discussion, but the information very much coming from the radio in the front office where you told us she works and you work. So in relation to Lorraine Dewar, it appears that her information was coming from the radio. Now, there's no mention of ISIS on the storm call cards or the airwaves transmissions. There's no mention at all of someone bouncing off someone else on the storm call cards or on the airwaves transmissions. And there's no mention of Mr. Bio wiping his face of spray or any gesturing, either on the storm call cards or on the airwaves transmissions. That information in relation to those three specific things must have come from someone who was at the scene. Would you agree? If it wasn't in the storm call cards, it wasn't in the airwaves transmissions, and if Lorraine Dewar is telling the truth that she didn't have any details, then it must have come from someone at the scene. Do you agree?
I agree with that, yes.
So where did you get that information when you were talking about it before 9 o'clock that morning?
I don't know. I honestly don't know where I've got the information from then. Obviously, it's been in general conversation with people in the front office, but I don't know specifically as they told me that information.
You must have got that from someone at the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recollection before 9 o'clock that morning of speaking to someone who was at the scene?
No. The only one would be was Sergeant Marks when he came to get my radio, but I've not spoken to, by that point, not spoken to anybody.
So no recollection at all?
No.
Right, can I ask you about your discussions with Constable Walker? So let's look first of all at the transcript for camera 14, please. And if we can look at page 22. And you'll see on page, if you have 22, do you?
Yes.
And you'll see that at 10:37:55, PC Craig Walker observed entering the secondary charge bar area and walk out of sight into the right cell corridor. And then at 10:38:17, PC Walker comes back into view exiting from the right cell corridor. He appears to be speaking with someone in the right cell corridor as he exits. At this time he's carrying 2 sleeves of white plastic polystyrene cups, 1 in each hand. PC Walker, it's been reported in the news that she's been stabbed. It's flippin', I didn't ken where they got that fae, but she's back from the hospital, so she's fine. Yeah, just a bit shaken, a bit CS, inaudible, and a punch to the back. The heat indicates to the back of his head with a sleeve of the plastic polystyrene cups held in his right hand. and it's inaudible. So that's the camera 14, which is the primary charge bar. And if we can also look at the transcript for camera 15. So the transcript for camera 15 is the secondary charge bar. And if we can look at pages 16 to 17, this is around the same time, 10:37:47.
Sorry, I'm on the wrong page.
So it's page 16 of the camera 15 transcript, which is the secondary charge bar.
Right, for page 15 you say?
Page 16, camera 15.
Right.
And you'll see at 10:37:47, PC Craig Walker enters a custody facility, whistling, and walks in the direction of the primary charge bar and cell corridor. And then 10:38:54, PC Walker enters the secondary charge bar area. At the same time, PC Geddes enters the custody facility. PC Geddes, everybody all right? There's additional comments made, but inaudible. PC Geddes follows PC Walker back out to the main door of the custody facility, and then over on to page 17, 10:42:16. PC Geddes enters the custody facility and walks in the direction of primary charge bar and cell corridor. And then 10:45, PC Geddes enters the secondary charge bar area and exits out the main door of the custody facility. So you'll see there's references in both those transcripts, that's 15 and 14, to PC Walker appearing on the CCTV.
Yep.
And then if we can look at 12, camera 12, which is the cell corridor. And again, we're going to look at 10:37:57, which is page 20. And it's the top of the page at page 20. And this covers 3 pages. You'll see 10:37:57. PC Craig Walker enters the cell corridor, walks to the storeroom, and obtains what appears to be 2 sleeves of plastic polystyrene cups. PC Coburn, is the girl all right? Walker, aye, she's fine, she's back. PC Walker, it's getting reported in the news, though this morning it's reported in the news that she'd been stabbed. So I didn't ken where they got that fee, but she's back for the hospital. She's fine now, just a bit shaken up. 10:42:26. PC Geddes enters the cell corridor carrying out custody duties. PC Geddes, his missus and baby are out front, and it seems like it's almost everybody that was there hit him with their baton. Not just one person, but in ways I says it's going to be better. Nobody's going to ken who struck the blow at the same point. Could be worse, because all of them hit him. Know what I mean? Craig, the boy that come for the cups, he's the one that was just bouncing off him. That's page 21. And then towards the end of that page, you'll see you say, they'll all come in and they've launched a big investigation into everything. It may well be that the CID will want to interview all the cops, get a statement from all the cops taken rather than just taking operational statements. Because at some point the PERC will want, once the cops have finished there, then PERC will come in and get involved and do all their things. They'll then interview them all and all. This will drag on for months and a half. And then it says inaudible. Nicole's back from the hospital. Apparently she's got a good cracking punch to the back of the head. He's put her down and the boy just stamped on her. Then they couldn't get him off of her. Didn't matter what they did, they just couldn't get the boy moving. And then they've had to, that's when they got the batons out. So you'll see that over each of these 3 transcripts, there's references to PC Walker being filmed on the CCTV in the different areas, primary charge bar, secondary charge bar, and the custody area, at round about 10:37. And it appears that at 10:37:47, which is the camera 15 transcript, he enters the facility walking in the direction of the primary charge bar, and you come into the custody facility just shortly after that. And then at 10:37:55, he's seen on camera 14 entering the secondary charge bar, so shortly after, and then walking through past the secondary charge bar towards the cell corridor, and then transcript 12, which is the camera regarding the cell corridor, he's seen going and getting some sleeves of plastic cups. And you told us earlier that was from a storeroom, and then he essentially walks all the way back.
Yes.
Through the different areas that he's just walked through. Right, I'm going to try and play these clips, and Miss Drury's going to help me with that. So maybe we could start with the camera 14 transcript, which is 10:37:55. That's him entering the secondary charge bar area. And we're looking at times at round about 10:37, that sort of time. And what do we see here?
That's the camera from behind the main custody, the charge bar.
So that's the primary
primary
charge
one.
bar area.
Yes.
And the door that we see at the top of the screen there, where does that come from or lead to?
The top right-hand corner of the screen, that leads back out as if you head back to the inquiry office, custody office.
Right.
And just to the right of that door is where the secondary charge bar is.
So the door that we see facing the camera is out to the main inquiry desk.
Yes.
And then there's some grey cabinets that you see in front of the camera.
Filing cabinets or the custody
Filing
relevant
cabinets.
paperwork's kept in.
And
So that's
just-
the property
Right.
lockers.
Just beyond those grey cabinets to the right, there's another door there.
Yes.
And where does that lead?
Just on the right, past those cabinets, that takes you into the male side of the cells.
Right. And the door on the left?
The
at
left,
top?
that's the female side of the cells.
Right. Thank you. All right. So let's play this clip for a short time. This is camera 14.
She had reported in the news that she's been stabbed. She had fucking, she didn't want to go back there. Because she's back to the hospital, she's hanging out. And just about shaking it. That's there, she's in that car. Once to the back of the heater. So she's in that.
And if we can just stop that there. And who was that we saw with the white plastic cups?
That was Craig Walker.
That was Craig Walker. Who's he talking to? Who's on the other side of the door?
At that point, it may well be the officer. I don't know his name because it wasn't a local cop. We had two cops from Edinburgh that were on constant observations on one of the custodies, and they would be sitting roughly where Craig was looking.
Where were you at this stage?
I'd went down, before I'd went down the female side, doing checks down the female cells.
Right. And then can we look at camera 15, please? So we looked at the transcript a moment ago. This is the secondary charge bar. And again, we're looking for roughly 10:37:47. And just if we stop there, we're at 10:37, and we see an officer walking along there. Is that PC Walker?
Yes, it is.
And where's he come from?
He's come out of that door that would lead to either the inquiry office, the custody office, or the corridor that would take him to other parts of the building. It's the
And
custody
this
area.
is him walking past the secondary charge bar.
Yes,
And he's heading towards a door that would lead him where?
to the primary charge bar, or into towards the male cells, to the storeroom where the cups are.
And can we just play this? This is... And if we can just stop that there, was that you that we saw?
Yes, it was.
So you were coming in that door near the secondary charge bar. By this time, PC Walker's got the white plastic cups.
Yes.
And you follow him out after he leaves. So you've come in that door and you follow him out. Did you continue to speak to him at that?
I did, yes.
You did. And then can we just keep playing, please? We can just stop that there. And is that you returning from your conversation with PC Walker?
Yes, it is.
And heading back towards the primary charge bar area?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to ask you some questions about what we hear in these moments. Can I ask you to look at your inquiry statement first of all? And you might want to look at paragraphs 46 to 55. And you'll see that the inquiry team have asked you a number of questions about your discussions with PC Walker on the 3rd of May 2015. And when you gave your inquiry statement, you said at one point Craig's coming through to get cups because they're sitting in the canteen and wanting to get a cup of tea. I did speak to Craig and I did ask him who all hit him, and he said we all did, and that was it. He then went and got the cups. I've went back to doing my work. So when you're asked by the inquiry team about this, you basically recall a conversation that amounts to who all hit him and PC Walker saying we all did, and nothing else.
Yes.
And then you say at paragraph 47, I just assumed apart from that comment, he said that it was everybody there that's had their baton out and hit him. And then you go on to be asked questions to be referred to your perk statement, and that's on the 14th of July. I won't take you to this because it's quoted here. Again, I remember asking him how Constable Short was, but I cannot remember his response, nor do I remember exactly what I said. I don't remember asking about Nicole, but it happened. But at this moment in time, I don't remember it. So your recollection when you gave your inquiry statement that was as you've set out in paragraph 46. But then you're referred to your perk statement and it refreshes your memory and you remember asking also about Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 49 you see the statement looks as if that was quite a lengthy time with Craig. It was only a matter of seconds. It's like passing in the corridor when he's been getting the cups. And I just asked him those questions to make sure he's all right, but it's in passing. It's not as if there's been any length of time starting a long conversation about it. You were a bit shocked at paragraph 50 about the way he looked. And then at paragraph 51, as much as we were told not to speak to them, I was concerned because I'm not used to seeing Craig like that. So I was wanting to make sure he was all right. I did ask him about the incident with Ash and the baton, as much as we were told not to. When it's somebody you work with, when it's somebody you class as a friend, and you see them like that, you're going to at least ask them if they're all right. I'm sorry, the human side of people with somebody you work with day in, day out, you want to make sure they're all right. I shouldn't even have asked him what I did, but it's a friend, you want to make sure he's all right. And then you say, I don't know if he's answered stuff that I've asked him, or he said it off his own back. And then you're referred to your statement again, perk statement 23rd July, paragraph 53. It said the information told to me by PC Walker included the fact that all officers had batoned the deceased. They were having trouble restraining him. PC Nicole Short had received a blow to the back of her head and she'd been stamped on. I know at the time it was mentioned that she'd been stamped on, but I don't recall that conversation with Craig. And Craig saying, I'm aware of him saying that they'd all battened him, but I can't recall him saying about Nicole. I know at some point I was aware that Nicole had been assaulted, I can't remember. And then at paragraph 55, I've been asked if I saw Constable Walker later on in the day. No. So it seems that when you gave your inquiry statement, all you remembered was one comment by you and one response by Constable Walker.
Mhm.
I think subsequently, having been referred to your PERC statements, you then remember that it was a more detailed conversation. But you still thought it was just a few seconds.
Yep.
But then did you go on to be referred to the transcripts and look at the transcripts of the CCTV that we've just looked at?
This is, again, I think I did, yes.
Right. And do you now accept that your conversation with Constable Walker was more extensive at that time?
Yes,
Yeah. It wasn't as limited as you'd recalled
that's correct,
when you
yes.
first spoke to the inquiry. So, in relation to what information Constable Walker actually gave you during that conversation, we've heard that Constable Walker was at Hayfield Road, and he was one of the first officers on the scene and remained there until Mr. Bio was taken away in the ambulance. What information were you given by Constable Walker at that time?
At the time, I can't recall the full information they gave me at this.
Right.
He's the one that said that he was bouncing off him. They couldn't get him off Nicole. And when they used the CS and the Pava on Mr. Bayou, that's when he's made the gesture of basically wiped out of his face. That it's had no effect on him. There's a small percentage of people that CS and Pava don't affect. And I don't think it's Craig that's told me that. And then they managed to restrain him, get him to the ground and got him handcuffed.
So he gave you more details than you'd received from the airwaves transmissions,
Yes.
or the storm cards, or from Lorraine,
Yes.
or anyone else really who you'd
Yes.
spoken to at that time. Can we look at camera 12 to page 20 for the transcript, please? So at this stage, at the bottom of page 20, you say that it's going to be better. Nobody's going to ken who struck the blow at the same point. Could be worse, 'cause all of them hit him. Know what I mean? Now that reads as if all of the officers at the scene struck Mr. Bio. Is that the information that you got from Constable Walker?
When I asked Craig who hit him, he said we all did. I took that to mean that everybody there struck him. No names were given. I've just made the assumption, because he said we all hit him, that everybody did.
So was it your assumption that they all hit him with a baton?
From that expression, yes.
Right. But the information he gave you was that they all hit him, all the officers at the scene?
Yes, when I asked that question.
And you thought that was a better situation?
To the extent that because at that point I wasn't sure who had struck potentially the lethal blow. To me, it's always better if that's happened. You don't know who's done it. So it's going to weigh on someone's conscience more if they know they're the person that's struck a fatal blow. However, if you don't know who's done it, maybe I walked away in thinking, but you'd rather not know if you're the person that's caused someone to die.
Was it your assumption that it was a blow to the head with a baton that had caused Mr. Bio's death?
I would assume a blow to the head with a baton wouldn't be the better thing to do anyway. It could cause that offence. Okay, sorry, that injury.
And when we see at the top of page 21, he's the one that was just bouncing off him. So was it PC Walker that had given you the information about him bouncing off Mr. Bile?
Yes.
And then you say at the bottom of page 21, the CID will want to interview all the cops, get a statement from all the cops taken rather than just taking operational statements. What is it you mean by that?
If you do an operational statement, you prepare that on your own, and it may well be that because of the nature of what happened, that they will want to effectively get a statement noted, potentially under caution, by police officers.
Is it suspects who are interviewed under caution?
Usually suspects, yes.
And was it part of your conversation with PC Walker that they may be interviewed under caution?
I don't recall if I had that conversation, no.
And then you say that PERC are going to get involved. And if we can move on to page 22, you talk about he's put her down and the boy just jamp on her, stamped on her. Are you talking about Mr. Bile?
Yes.
And they couldn't get him off of her. Didn't matter what they did, they just couldn't get the boy moving. And then that's when they got the batons out. Was that information from Constable Walker?
I would say yes.
Right. Can you explain to the chair when D.I. Robson told you not to speak to any of the officers who'd been at the scene, why you had that conversation with Constable Walker?
At the end of the day, they're still my friends, work colleagues, and when I saw Craig was not the Craig Walker that I knew. Craig he's a happy-go-lucky type bloke, and he just did not look the same person. So I've had a conversation asking if he's all right, and then that's led on to, I can't remember if I asked him what happened or if he told me what had happened. But I was wanting to speak to him to make sure he was okay. I know I shouldn't have, but at the end of the day, he's my work colleague and he's someone I would still class as a friend, and you want to make sure they're okay.
Now, I'm conscious of the time. I just want to ask one last question because I might forget tomorrow. When you had custodies in the cell corridor that day, were any of them black or Asian?
To my knowledge, I don't know. I can't answer that question just now. No, I don't know.
Right. I'm not going to be able to finish going through the clips with this witness today.
Yes, very well. You return to continue your evidence tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
I'm cited for a court hearing tomorrow in Kirkcaldy.
Is that the Sheriff Court, is it?
Yes.
Well, I'll just rise briefly if you wait, and we'll discuss how best to deal with that. Well, Constable, in the circumstances, we'll continue with your evidence on Friday at 10 a.m.
Yes, sir.